right, folks, we are back knee deep. Not just knee deep, we are totally deep in the second hour here on Straight Out of the Cannon with me, Scott Cannon. It is September the 5th, 2025, 7:35 in the PM, so I've got less than a half an hour to get through what I'm trying to get through before Dr. Williams comes in with the 2x4 and starts regulating like Hacksaw Jim Duggan and throws me out personally. So let's get to it, folks. Let's get to it. You know, there's a lot of focus on crime these days in our society. And most of it's coming from a lot of right-wing people, but you see a lot of black activists talk about crime as well. And those of us who are concerned about crime but don't like the hysterical way that crime is covered in the media and is talked about, we all have a familiar refrain. It's not as bad as it was 30 years ago. It's not as bad as it was 30 years ago. It's not. Gary, Indiana was the murder capital of the world about exactly 30 years ago, 1995, with over 130 murders here in this city. And just this week, no, I'm sorry, not this week, but a few weeks ago, the mayor and the police chief actually came out and said that really something very incredible happened, that for the first half of the year 2025, the city of Gary had 12 homicides. In the first half of the year. Now, I told you 30 years ago we were well over 130. That would be about 65 for the first half of, I mean, if you were cutting them in half, that'd be like 65 per half. 12 this year in 2025, something that we should all be very, very, very proud of as a community and as a city. And we should not let people like Donald Trump and other right-wingers or even black activists who do their own form of fear-mongering get in the way of celebrating that progress that we have. Even places like Chicago are nowhere near as violent as they were in the 90s. New York City used to have 2,000 murders a year in the early 90s. 2,000. Meanwhile, New York has usually 400, 500 maybe per year now. New York City has had less murders every year the last decade than they had in 1930. Same is true in LA and virtually every major city in America. We have very much put the days of historic crime rates, historic violent crime, historic murder rates behind us. But it's important to understand exactly what happened 30 years ago, 40 years ago. What happened? Why were things so bad 40 years ago? And who was to blame for all of this? Well, we're going to get into that.
In the 80s, there was a lifestyle of celebration, and Coke was part of that lifestyle.
It was the glitzy drug.
When crack came along, it changed everything about the black community, and it changed everything about America. It was like the gold rush.
There was people coming from all over to buy this wonder drug.
The drug so powerful, it will make you sell the clothes off your back.
The reporting played right into all of these stereotypes and this narrative.
But it's like that, and that's the way it is.
We must be intolerant of drug use and drug sellers.
You got a war on drugs. Is it not a war on the people that are supplying the drugs? Or is it only a war on the victims of the drug war?
Just say no.
It felt extraordinarily hypocritical.
This was happening at a time when the U.S. government was turning a blind eye to cocaine smuggling.
Our goal was to defeat communism in Central America. And if that meant drugs got in and the youth of America used them, well, that was the way it was going to be.
We knew that they were in on it. We knew that they were dealing on the side.
What would you steal? Money and drugs and guns, whatever was there.
That was kind of like chemical warfare on black communities. It's a story that has to be told.
Yes, crack cocaine. When we talk about the most violent periods in modern history, we have to talk about the crack epidemic and the crack era specifically. But where exactly did crack come from, and how did it become a part of all of our lexicon? How did I grow up in the world in the 80s and 90s and 2000s when I was growing up as a kid? How did I know so many crackheads? How did I see them on the way to school, laying out, doing what they were doing? And all my friends as well. Well, as one of the women just said, it was a form of chemical warfare on the black community. Our government, under Ronald Reagan, helped Nicaraguan drug cartels flood our communities with cheap cocaine. That cocaine funneled its way into every inner city in America, sparking the most violent period in modern American history, the crack epidemic. And for a while, nobody knew where it came from. Nobody knew how this happened. What was going on? But there was one man who connected the dots and made it possible for all of us to understand exactly what was happening to us. Gary Stephen Webb was born on August 31st, 1955 in Corona, California, and grew up in the Midwest. His father was actually a Marine, so his father worked for the government, and his family moved around frequently. He developed an early interest in writing and journalism, but did not complete a college degree. Instead, he gained experience while working through newspaper work, which also illustrates something that we need to talk about as a society as well. Our media, particularly newspaper writers and journalists, used to be working class people. Journalism used to be a working class profession. A lot of people did not have college degrees who were journalists. Now, a big part of the problem that we have in this country is that the journalists go to the same elite institutions as the politicians and the wealthy elites who own and control everything. And so they're a part of the conspiracy against working class and poor Americans as well. I just wanted to put that little addendum onto there. Gary Webb started as a reporter in the late 1970s. He worked for small newspapers before joining the Cleveland Plain Dealer, where he built a reputation for aggressive investigative reporting. Later, he joined the San Jose Mercury News in California, where he worked on stories about government, corruption, technology, and criminal justice. And this is where he would become a legendary figure to all of us in the justice community, all of us who were really obsessed with finding out truth about our government and our society. In the mid-'80s, Webb started to document how two Nicaraguan drug traffickers named Norwin Meneses and Oscar Danilo Blandón had imported tons of cocaine into the United States. Profits from these sales were funneled to support the Contras, the CIA-backed rebel groups that were fighting Nicaragua's leftist Sandinista government. And so it's important to elaborate on that really quick. Our government during the Cold War was so obsessed with beating the Soviet Union and defeating communism that they literally were willing to help Nicaraguan drug cartels, Contras, flood America's cities with crack cocaine, sparking the most violent period in modern history. So again, you know, living in America, being exposed to corporate media on a daily basis that's owned by the billionaire class, all you see is, you know, we scapegoat everything, socialism, communism. Everything is communist. Everything is socialist. But mind you, that it was the capitalists. Not that I'm anti-capitalism or anything. I'm not pro any one system per se. I'm a populist. But I just want to make this known that it was the capitalists who helped drug cartels flood our communities with crack in the 80s and 90s. The Soviet Union didn't do that. Fidel Castro didn't do that. The Chinese didn't do that. The good old US of A, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, the CIA, the supposed good guys. The ones who also helped put Nelson Mandela in prison for 27 years. They're the ones who pumped crack into our communities. It's important to just putting that out there. I'm not saying you gotta like communism or socialism or capitalism, any of that other stuff. I'm just saying, know who your enemy has been. Just saying. The profits, i.e. profits from these sales, were funneled to support the Contras, a CIA-backed rebel group fighting Nicaragua's leftist Sandinista government. The Contras were officially funded by the United States government, but when the Congress temporarily cut off aid due to the Boland Amendment being passed, the drug money actually helped fill the gap. So our government was told to stop funding these Contras. And so they said, okay, we'll just help them sell drugs instead. We'll help them sell drugs instead. Okay? Oscar Danilo Blandón, who was actually on the CIA's payroll at one point, don't know if he still is, but he was, supplied large quantities of cheap cocaine to a man named Freeway Ricky Ross. How many of you have ever heard that name? Freeway Ricky Ross. Freeway Ricky Ross. There's actually a rapper named Rick Ross who stole Freeway Ricky Ross's name. There's also a rapper named Freeway who stole his name from Freeway Ricky Ross as well. But Freeway, the original Freeway Ricky Ross, was a drug dealer in South Central Los Angeles. He became a major distributor of crack cocaine because of his connections to Oscar Danilo Blandón, who himself was working for the CIA. This helped fuel the crack epidemic that devastated black neighborhoods in LA and eventually spread nationwide. Webb argued that this drug pipeline directly linked CIA-backed forces abroad to the crack boom at home. While Webb did not prove that the CIA ordered or designed the crack epidemic, he showed that the CIA knew that their Contra allies were involved in drug trafficking and chose not to stop it. U.S. law enforcement agencies were often blocked and discouraged from prosecuting traffickers connected to the Contras. So our government knew. This was during Ronald Reagan's presidency. This is during George H.W. Bush's presidency. They knew. They knew that the Contras were flooding America's inner cities with crack cocaine, sparking historic amounts of violence in our communities. We have never fully recovered from crack. We have not. As a community, as a society. The reason people are still able to be fear-mongered about crime and violence the way they are in 2025, in spite of historically low crime in places like Gary, Indiana, and Baltimore, is because we are traumatized by what we witnessed in the 80s and 90s during the crack epidemic. And our government was a part of that, knowing the damage they were doing to our community and allowing it to happen. Gary Webb also highlighted how the U.S. foreign policy decisions disproportionately harmed Black American communities in California and around the country. His series gave a voice to the anger and suspicion that many Black Americans already held, that the government had allowed drugs to ravage inner cities. And that's why I really wanted to celebrate Gary Webb here on his birthday. A heavenly happy for Gary Webb, because he's no longer with us. We're going to get into that in a second. Hopefully I could get to that and this caller before Dr. Williams comes and kicks me out personally with the 2x4. But yeah, we're going to get into that. But it's important to celebrate what he was doing, because again, a lot of people wouldn't have known this. A lot of people suspected this, but a lot of people didn't know. Major outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Los Angeles Times published stories challenging Webb's conclusions and accusing him of overstating the CIA's role. Now, mind you, just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did a segment, if you listen to the show, about Project Mockingbird, where the CIA literally had people at the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the LA Times, and Time Magazine, and everywhere else, whose job it was to push American government propaganda down all of our throats. And so those people came out to attack Gary Webb en masse after he exposed what the CIA was doing. Under pressure, the Mercury News backed away from the series, eventually reassigning Webb to a smaller office. Feeling marginalized, Gary Webb resigned from the paper in 1997. He basically had to leave his job for doing his job too well. Isn't that something? Although his career was damaged, subsequent government investigations have validated many aspects of his reporting. In 1998, both the CIA Inspector General and the Justice Department released reports acknowledging that the CIA had indeed worked with the Contras and were aware of their activities. These findings confirmed key parts of Webb's reporting, although they did not fully support all of his claims about direct spread of crack cocaine. After leaving mainstream journalism, Webb continued writing for alternative publications and worked on government-related investigations. He also wrote a book called Dark Alliance, the CIA, the Contras, and the Crack Cocaine Explosion. I suggest everybody get it. It is a really good book, which expanded on his original reporting. But unfortunately, much of his life, his personal life, this is a man who sacrificed everything to tell his story and tell the story of the crack epidemic. His life started to fall apart after all of this was exposed. And on December the 10th, 2004, Gary Webb died of 2 gunshot wounds to the head. You heard that right. 2 gunshot wounds to the head. Huh? 2 gunshot wounds to the head? I'm just saying, folks. I'm just saying. I'm not going to say it, but I'm just saying. 2 gunshots to the head. That's how he died, apparently. The coroner ruled a suicide. 2 gunshots to the head. They ruled it a suicide. Just saying. Let me get this last caller because I got to get out of here in a few seconds. Hello, caller. Hurry up. Yeah, you gotta speak up, and you gotta be quick.
We did military incursions in Honduras 10 times, Nicaragua about 16 times.
Okay.
And I just want to say what Nancy used to say, right?
No.
The whole time when they were spreading the workings of the Powell memo, the doctrine.
Yes.
It's part of it. And they work with Uber to create this stuff. I mean, it's diabolical, monster stuff. But God, thanks a lot.
But thank you for your call, brother. It's all good. Yes, absolutely. The same people who are behind the Powell memo definitely had something to do with crack. Or should I say all that goes on in our society as well.